Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, The Profit Secret Your Competitors Don't Want You to Know. My name is Dean Holmes. I am the product marketing manager here at Cavallo. I have over 30 years serving customers in the technology industries. I'm based in San Francisco. I love hiking around my city. Also love getting out of the city. There's lots of hiking around, and I love music and dancing. Before I get started, I have a few housekeeping items to mention. Today, you can expect about 35, 40 minutes presentation followed by Q&A. Feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen, and we will do our best to answer all the questions at the end. Today's webinar is being recorded, so you will be able to view it on our YouTube page within the next 24 hours. I'm joined today by Blake Minke, who's lead product manager for Cavallo's Profit Max platform. Blake's had 15 plus years in business software as a software engineer and product manager. He is based out of lovely Grand Rapids, for those of you who heard us chatting earlier. He loves dogs, software, and hardware. I love that you put that in that order. And an avid reader, something that him and I have in common. Um, Blake, thanks for joining us. I know you're going to be back later to give us a tour of the Profit Max platform after we sort of set the stage for you.
That's right.
All right, Blake. Talk to you soon. Thank you. All right. So quickly, just going to go through the agenda. I am going to talk about profitability and distribution, and it'll lead into some aspects of why we're here. We want to talk about the impact of the order, science of profit, why Cavallo in all of this, and then Blake again is going to come back and give you some product demos, and then we're going to go into Q&A. So, um, I'm going to start off with the importance of distribution. I know this isn't new to anyone here. Obviously, you know this. You're in this industry. It's a huge industry. It's a massive global industry as well as when you think just even domestically, it's the market is ginormous. And one of the big things is being such a crucial landscape is there's a lot of players. And how do you differentiate yourself in that market? Well, the big piece is to understand that regardless of what your average mid-market distributor, and we've got some numbers here, roughly 5% profit before tax, 8% return on assets, $400,000 revenue per employee. Whether that fits you, whether you're making more, whether you're less, it doesn't really matter. The key is that there's potentially more to be made. And how do you change that? Well, the first step is recognizing that being focused on profitability will differentiate you in the market. But how do you step out of the pack, I think is the big question here, right? Well, there's a few predictions that we have for profit-minded distributors that they should be focused on. The first of which is focusing on data-driven profitability. We're gonna hit on this obviously a little more here shortly, but really being focused on what is the data telling me? What is the reality of my situation? The second is focused on profitability metrics, right? It's very easy to focus on revenue or focus on number of sales, but really focusing on what is the baseline of my profitability and what is actually driving that. The third piece is going to be customer value segmentation. So this is, there's such a tendency to focus on customers based upon the volume that they purchase or the size of the customer. But really understanding their value is going to be a key aspect for profitable distributors as we move forward. And then finally, technology. The requirement for technology that is profit focused, especially as you think about technology that's going to potentially provide you recommendations of next steps or things that you can do to eliminate or help drive profitability is going to be key for that. Now, before we get too deep into this, I do want to talk about one of the most important pieces of profitability. And for those of you folks that have been on with us, maybe you were on our earlier session with Mike and Paul, and some of our other ones. We talk about this often, but I'm going to go through it because truly it is an important piece and really the core of profitability and the secret we're here to talk about. So I'm going to go through this again and really kind of focus on why we think the order contains all the ingredients of profitability, and it's the lifeblood of your organization. So in this example here, I've got a single order. That order might include a bunch of data fields, might include a bunch of lines for the order. It'll probably go through a few different hands. And, if I think about maybe an average customer who's selling 500 orders a day, 2,500 orders a week, My goal is that all of those are profitable, that they're all making me money, that they're all making me the maximum amount of money. They might be profitable, but maybe there's more profitability there. Well, I think we all recognize that the reality of life is that you're not going to have all perfect orders. You may have less than 30 or 40% defect rates. You may have more than 30 or 40% defect rates, and you may not even know how many defect rates you have, which is not an uncommon thing. But the reality is this is a pretty leaky bucket when you think about it. If you have defects in that many orders, that's that many chances to lose profitability. And that adds up, right? 2,500 orders a week, 52 weeks in a year, and you get to 130,000 orders pretty quickly. And obviously, 30-40% defect rate, if that carries with you, that's a whole lot of leaky buckets. Just as importantly, that's a whole lot of data to understand. You know, if you think about 130,000 orders, multiply that times your fields, your lines, your number of touches, you're talking about billions of data points to be able to try to understand where my bucket is leaking. And there's a lot of things that impact profitability, right? We're going to focus mostly on some of these financial ones, such as low margin, lower price than last time, higher cost than last time, incorrect pricing or pricing discounts. These are all things that can crucially impact your profitability. And getting to profitability isn't easy, and we all know hope isn't a strategy. Again, if you've seen this before, I love this slide just because it is a relatively common thing that we hear of hey, well, I know we're making some money. Not exactly sure why or how much it's being impacted with what we're doing. But if you really truly want to find the most profitability in an organization, understanding how to find and fix leaks is pretty much impossible without purpose-built technology. Again, going back to those billions of data points, how do you dig through that to understand that? Now, that leads us to the next piece here, what I want to talk about, which is the science of profit. And this is going to lead us into the secret that we all came here to talk about. Now, before I get to that, I want to talk about the metrics, those key metrics that are focused on profitability, because so many times our customers will be focused on things like just general revenue or number of units sold. And those are good metrics, but when it comes to understanding, am I profitable as an organization, there's better metrics to be utilized. Things like gross margin percentage, your operating profit, which is equals to pre-tax profit, your return on assets. Sales per employee is a relatively common one, but we have one that we're starting to see a little more of, which is profit per employee. All of these are the bottom line metrics that are going to let me know that I am being profitable. Now, the key to understanding that profitability is how this aligns with my daily sales, my daily functions throughout the day. Now, I've got a snapshot here of a distributor. Again, you've probably maybe have seen this previously. This is just to give us a baseline here for understanding how we correlate different things within an organization. So, in this instance, I got a $20 million company. You know, got 10,000 customers, 50 employees, thousands of SKUs, and again, about 500 orders a day. They got about 15 million cost of goods for a gross margin of $5,000. And when you run all this down through looking at expenses, the profit before taxes or operating expenses is about $500,000 or about 2.5%. Now, when I focus on looking at the performance metrics here for profitability is really where I want to focus, and we'll talk about as we go forward on this. What's my gross margin percentage, my operating percentage, return on assets, sales per employee, and profit per employee? And that leads us to the profitability secret that we're here to talk about today. This is the thing that can make a difference between you and your competitors. The key to understanding this is that the smallest changes, in this instance, this is some customer data we wanted to show the impact of a small change in lines per order. So 0.5 increase in lines per order. Those small changes can have an outsized impact on your profitability. In this example, that 0.5 change in lines per order showed up as a $3.5 million margin increase for this customer based upon their data. So a very, very small change in the sale or the order has an extremely large impact on the rest of your profitability. Now, I'm going to explain this in a little bit more depth. I'm going to geek out a little bit, but I think it's important because it helps us to understand what I mean by this and how we can show you these impacts. At the core level, again, going back to the importance of the order, this is where all of your profit resides. If I look at the gross margin of an order, it's relatively easy. Calculation looks a little scary, but effectively for how many lines I have in my order, what is my price minus my cost times the quantity? Any of those things are going to impact the gross margin of that order. And then as I go down, that starts to impact my gross margin. When I look at the total gross margin, that impact times the number of orders times the number of customers then flows down into my net profit. Once I subtract my costs, once I subtract my expenses, that's where I get my total profitability. Now, this is important because as we show here, all of that stems down from that gross margin of the order. Here's some simple examples. We're going to go back to that P&L, and there's this before here of the $20 million. I want to show the impact of a small change in price. So a small change in price here of 1.25%. In this instance, we're looking at this as an increase. Maybe I increased by 1.25%. It's going to increase my gross margin by 5%. And you can see here my profit before taxes or operating profit has gone up 47.5% to $737,000, which again, now as I look down my return on assets, my profit per employee all go up based upon a very small change. Now, that could be a positive change or that could be a negative change. Those numbers just obviously flip if I had a price reduction. The same thing happens with cost. As I look at cost in this equation, a small increase or decrease in cost, in this case, we're thinking decrease, is going to increase my gross margin because my cost has gone down. Profit before taxes again goes up to 50% by 50%. Operating profit, return on assets, my profit per employee all go up in correlation with this. Now, when I combine these, this is where I can start to get even more effects. Now, this could be positive effects. Maybe I bring my price up, my cost goes down, and I get a significant increase. That could be the flip side. In addition, that could also be where maybe I have a cost that goes up. Can't imagine why that's happening suddenly for some people. What can I do to counter that with a small pricing increase? So there's a lot of ways to look at what these changes can do, and this is actually going to be one of the things that we're going to show you when we get into the product demo and talk to you about that. So why Cavallo? Why are we here? Why are we talking to you about this? Why are we sharing this secret with you, and what are we telling you can do about it? Well, for us, this is our entire purpose. Our entire purpose is to make our customers more profitable, competitive, and valuable. This is why we exist. And that philosophy is what drives our products. We are focused on building profitability technology, solutions to help you move outside of the pack. We want to help our customers become more profitable. And what we're going to focus on today is a technology platform called the Profit Max platform. And that platform helps distributors turn that complex ERP data, so those billions of points of data, into clear, prioritized actions, and with no need for BI tools or data teams required. Now, we're going to focus on two key aspects of the Profit Max platform: margin intelligence and customer intelligence. And we're going to talk about how those things can have outsized impact on your profitability. So I'm going to pull Blake back in, and the first piece that we're going to talk about today is going to be margin intelligence. And there's three key features that we're going to focus on today. One is going to be margin variance analysis, and Blake's going to show you how you can dig down into the real core of your orders, your lines, your customers, et cetera, to understand those very small minutia and what's affecting your profitability. I'm also going to show you profit indicators. This is a really cool function of really seeing sort of the metrics that are at the top line of your profitability and how, again, those small changes can impact, which leads to our what if scenario generator, which Blake's going to show you as well, which is really cool because it's almost exactly what I was showing you about how those small impacts or how you can see what potential impacts things are going to have on your profitability. So with that, I am going to hand this over to Blake to talk about margin intelligence within the Profit Max platform.
All right. Thank you, Dean. Good stuff. All right. So we are going to take a look here and talk about margin intelligence. So as you can assuredly imagine, a Profit Max platform software package is going to include quite a few features related to profitability and margin. And so we're just going to focus on a couple of those here today. So right now we're on the home screen of the Profit Max platform. And you can see that here at the bottom, we have some customer stuff, some item stuff, but we're really going to be focused right now on these top widgets here. So, Profit Max platform is very cool in that it has a number of tools that are designed to help you at different levels of your business. So you have those things that you have to understand at the macro level, right? Those aggregate overarching numbers. But where you can really drive a lot of those incremental improvements you do at that more micro level, those smaller changes that get those average lines per order, those little metrics, those profit indicators up that end up driving a lot of profitability for your business. So here on the left, we have margin summary. So this is, these are values that pretty much everyone who has used a BI platform is used to seeing, or in their ERP. You have your overarching, how much did you do in sales? What was your overall cost of goods sold? And in the end, what was my overall gross margin here? Now, this data that we're looking at is some 2024 data for one of our demo companies, just called Polaris. And you can see here that it's taking those numbers and it's just giving me an easy view to say, okay, well, I had $22.8 million dollars in gross margin in 2024, but how did that compare to 2023? So in this case, you could see that it's actually down about $196,000 versus the prior year. And as we kind of go across these widgets to the right, you can see here that we now have, margin trend over time. And this is just the span of months over that last year. But then we get to this feature we're going to really focus on right now over here on the right, which is margin variance analysis. So before we really dive into what margin variance analysis can do, we have to talk about what it is. And so margin variance analysis is really one of the big tentpole features of the Profit Max platform. And what it does so differently from any other system you've ever used is it actually takes your two comparison periods. In this case, we're looking at 2024 versus 2023. And what it does is it takes, we have a bunch of machine learning and algorithms under the hood that take all of your data from 2024 and compare it to all of your data from 2023 in this case. And what it does is it actually breaks down the changes between those periods of time so that you can really hone in on the actual margin changes and what is driving your margin changes under the hood. So when we actually talk about what those things are, it's changes to price. The price on this item that you were selling went up in 2024, so you generated this much more profit or revenue. Cost is there. What about returns? Your returns between those two periods of time may have drastically changed. This customer returned very little in 2023, but they returned a lot of value of product in 2024. And being able to go in and focus in on those values is really important. So this widget here on the right is giving me kind of that overarching breakdown of, okay, well, related to like I sold, in this case, more quantity of things. And so I have a positive number here related to its net impact on my overall margin. But my price, oof, went down almost $1 million period over period. So seeing these numbers in aggregate is certainly very interesting and gives you that high level peek into what might be going on with your margin. But like we've been talking about throughout this whole webinar, a lot of the really interesting stuff is when you get in under the hood and find out like what are the things actually driving these changes in prices or this change in volume or returns. So if we actually go into this experience, we're landing on this page, is margin variance analysis top 5. And so this is kind of an intermediary page in this experience that takes, again, all of the results of that comparison data and tells me more specifically where I'm gaining and losing margin. So in this case, the first thing I see here is customer. So when we are talking about the differences in my actual margin period over period, what is actually changing? I can right now see that my biggest profit change related to customers was that this customer, Real Pro Sports, spent $165,000 less with me in 2024 than they did in 2023. And maybe that's something I knew about. But if it's not, this again exposes a bunch of data points where I might take action in my business in order to protect or recover that profit. Because if I did not, if I'm a sales manager and I didn't know that we were losing, that this customer's buying habits shifted that drastically, like I can be going to that sales rep and I can be asking questions or tasking them with understanding what is driving such a huge behavior change for a customer that was clearly spending a lot of money with us. Now, you can also see over here on the right, you can actually see the opposite end of that spectrum as well. You can see these ones are green here. So Owens and Cycling, they spent $125,000 more with us than they did last period. And you can see as we kind of go down here that there's a number of ways that you can look at this information. For instance, where did I lose the most money for things that I sold less of this period versus last period? Or who are the sales reps who individually sold less this period than they did last period? And the same for customer class and item class. So again, some really interesting ways to start digging into that data. Now you can see I have a number of uh, options here at the top of the page. So what I can actually do is instead of looking at the net impact here, I can actually go and focus in on just the losses. And maybe I'm looking across here and I see, wow, period over period, like $125,000 more in returns were in this period than last period. And that's a huge number. So maybe I filter down here and I start looking at, well, who were the customers that were returning way more this period than last period? What items were they returning more of? Is this a problem where I sold them something they didn't need? Or did I sell something and my vendor or my manufacturer sent them or sent me bad goods that now my customer is returning to me? These are all really important pieces of information that I can take and make those, again, those decisions in my business that are going to increase my profitability. Because maybe if we go back to the homepage here, maybe at the macro level, again, at that top level, maybe things look very positive for me. Let's say that, I had done another $1 million in gross margin here. Like I would see green numbers. Hey, we are up $1 million from where we were. Like that's amazing. But maybe when you go in here and you start looking at margin variance analysis, you find that, yeah, there were a lot of good things that happened, and those good things outweighed the bad things. But if I have people returning a ton of product, or if I have costs that are going up while I didn't raise the price, like just because maybe your business is looking good does not mean that there aren't massive things that or massive amounts of profit that you should or could be bringing in if you made some small changes. So let's say that I've come here and I found, wow, what is going on with Real Pro Sports? I can actually click on this Real Pro Sports here. And this is going to take me into a more detailed page for margin variance analysis, where I can actually see for Real Pro Sports here, like this negative $165,000. Like, where did that actually come from, that number? And I can come in here and I can see that this mostly is coming from changes in quantity from what they were buying. So you can see that there are 4 items here that they bought less of this period than they did last period. But you can actually see here at the bottom, this isn't just calling out the negative things. It's calling out the things that might have gone well too. Like they bought a lot less of these other products, but they bought more of this tennis ball here at the bottom. And so I can come in here and I can look at that big picture. Or again, I could come in here and I could say, okay, I really just want to focus on the losses. And I want to see for Real Pro Sports, like I want to focus in and understand why they stopped buying these things. And MVA is exposing to me a really easy way to come in here and very specifically say, these customers are buying less from you or they're returning more to you or whatever that I might want to then take and take action on to again improve that profitability, fix whatever issue is causing those returns. Am I selling them the wrong thing? Or is this a customer who is a habitual returner and I need to, maybe make changes to my process or with my sales rep to accommodate that. And if I actually, I'm going to open this back up. If I go in here, you could see that there's this top line here. They bought $115,000 less of this item. And I can actually go in here and I can click on the related lines. And uh, this is going to show me the actual line items from the invoices that they bought, again, more or less of, or returns, or whatever it is that I clicked on here in margin variance analysis. So it really gives you that big picture. I can then hone in and say, wow, this customer is returning more. What's going on here? And then I can go in and literally look at those returns and say, oh, here's the timeline for what they returned. Because maybe I come in here, and let's just focus on returns for a second. Maybe I come in here, let's see. Okay, this is a great example, this top one here. Like, they returned $29,000 worth of product here, and it was all on one return. All right, that doesn't say to me that this is a habitual returner. This customer got a bad shipment of something. How did that happen? Where they returned 210 items, whatever, a pallet of something. And I may be, again, that may be digging into my profitability. One last thing I want to hit on here is that I know we've been talking about kind of year over year, but you have a number of options here. You can look at quarter over quarter, last calendar year, the trailing 3 months. So you have some interesting time frames to actually do this analysis through. I can also say one cool thing here is in the top right, we have this segment dropdown. So we've been talking about margin variance analysis through the customer lens here, but you actually have a couple of options where you can go in and you could say, well, I want to look at this by sales rep. So now I can see for the customers that had more returns, whose sales reps were they? You could see that Kevin Buck here had almost $35,000 more in returns than Don Ortega. Like, is there a training opportunity here to resolve that issue? Is there something that we could be coaching someone on? Or again, is this a customer who is a problem? And we all have those customers who are a problem. Then we need to understand that so that the next time that they're calling us up to place a big order of something that they keep returning, we can have a more intelligent conversation. And how do we protect ourselves? Profitability there. A couple other options available in there, like you can look at this through customer class. So in this case, we're still looking at returns, and my national accounts are the ones who have the most in returns, and my resellers have the least amount. So again, there's just an interesting spectrum of information that you can really look at here to analyze and find those things that you can change, that you can take action on to increase your company's profitability. All right, the next thing that we're going to talk about is something called profit indicators. So this is another really cool feature that is pretty special from Cavallo. And what this does is it takes all of your sales data for a given period of time, and it calculates a bunch of really interesting metrics related to your sales that you can then chart over time and start understanding as far as, well, how do these small changes that I might make actually impact my bottom line? So we can come in here and we could say, again, we're looking at year over year. Like in the current period, I had 10,578 unique customers, and last year it was 10,655. So you can see there's a variance of I sold the 77 fewer distinct customers period over period. So there are a number of metrics in here related to volume, sales, cost of goods sold, and margin. So what was the average margin per line for the line items I sold in this period versus last period? If I'm trying to push my sales reps to go out and cross sell and upsell, I can be looking here and really understanding at that fundamental profit indicator level. Like, are the average number of lines on my orders, is that number growing or is it not? And I can come in here and I can understand those little components that are making up my business. how much am I selling an average line item for? How much am I discounting on an average line to my customers? So beyond just being able to come here and track these metrics over time and see, am I improving? Am I selling more per order than I used to? You can actually use a different feature that is tied into this one called what if. And what if analysis is probably exactly what you think it is from the name. We have all of these values here are the real values that we calculated. These are the real numbers from this year and last year. But what if, what if I had sold more lines per order? What if I had more or less customers? What impact would that have on my bottom line? And so if we actually go into what if here, you can see that those values were defaulted in here for me. And I could actually come in and you may not remember, but these were the same, margin, sales, and COGS from my summary when we were looking earlier. And so now I can come in and say, okay, well, what if my customer base, my unique customers that I'm selling to, what if that went up by even 1%? Whoops. What impact would that have on my business? And I can calculate that. And if it went up 1%, I would make an estimated $255,987 more for 1% difference. And that may seem like a lot to some of you, and it may seem like very little to others. And what's interesting is that you can come in here, let me reset this, and you could say, well, what if I made a 1% increase to my average lines per order? What impact does that have? And you can see that it's actually almost the same. This one's $255,000. But let's say that I am trying to push my sales reps to sell at least one more item, one more average line item on 1 out of 10 documents, right? That's 10%. So what if this went up by 10%? That's $2.5 million if you were to sell just one more line item every 10 orders. And that is huge. And understanding how some of these, again, these small profit indicators can drastically impact your business is really powerful. And you can see that as you actually change these percents over here or these values, you can see where it actually impacts your business. So it increases your average lines per order, your average sales per order, then obviously goes up in concert. And so if you sold more items, you would have more cost of goods sold as well. So it kind of cascades these changes. And so you can also do combinatory things here. So let's reset here. Let's say that I want to raise my prices. And so I'm going to raise my prices by 5%, right? That might be a pretty big increase depending on what you sell. So 5%. So let's say that I'm going to raise this price and I know I'm going to lose a couple of customers. Some customers just aren't going to be able to stomach this increase in price. And so let's say that I think 2% of my customers can't stomach it. Well, overall, if I increase my price by 5% and I lose 2% of my customers, where do I actually end up? And you can see this is estimating a gain of $1.6 million. And so you can really come in here, change these levers, and really start to understand how some of these small changes can fundamentally improve your profitability. All right, Dane, I'm going to hand it back to you.
That's awesome, Blake. I love the what if calculator. It's one of the coolest features I think we have as I'm going through the presentation and trying to show the impact of those small changes in price and cost and you just plugging in numbers and making it look, making it look and make sense. It's such a fascinating aspect of what we do with margin intelligence. Um, so on that note, we talked to you about margin intelligence, and we talked to you about how understanding at the micro level with MVA, so understanding all those little variances and differences and changes in behavior or changes in the order can impact and how they're impacting, and then obviously the macro level of those changes all the way up through your bottom line. We also want to talk about the customer and what we can do on the customer side of things, and how small changes, some big changes, but small changes and thinking about it from that level can have an outsized impact on your customer profitability. And I'll go back a little bit to the calculation, only because I want to tie it to a customer here, and so you can understand how, if I have focused and I've created a situation where I can now calculate and understand the profitability of every order, and I can tie that to my customers, I can then say, hey, I understand who my most valuable customers are. And again, if I focus on profitability, it's not always going to be the customer that buys the most volume. It's not always going to be the customer that has the best name, that we want to put on our website. Sometimes it could be the customers that you maybe expect the less, but they actually buy products from you at a higher profitability. So understanding that is key. From there, you want to understand, how do I keep those customers, right? How do I ensure that the customers I have now aren't going to leave me? Well, the first key to that is understanding when they might be leaving you. So the ability to protect the customer base is key to your profitability, especially if you can focus on the customers that are most profitable. And then once you combine those two, more profitable customers, making sure I'm keeping those, obviously I'm going to drive more profitability. And that's going to lead us into the next section that Blake's going to talk to you about, which is customer intelligence. And this is where you're going to see some really cool stuff. One of them is going to be our customer ABCD segmentation. So this is segmenting customers and understanding their financial impact. So it's not just segmenting them by overall numbers, et cetera. It's really by the value. There's customer segmentation, which is your more focused segmentation. So as Blake maybe mentioned, I need to be able to recognize and look by region, by sales rep, by vertical. That's an important thing to also categorize when you're thinking about where do I want to focus my attention and focus my profitability. And then finally, churn prediction. So again, as from a standpoint of your customers, if I can understand customers are going to be leaving me, or if I can see where I might have at-risk customers, especially if I'm tying that to value, I can then focus my efforts and put my money and put my time and resources where it makes the most sense. So on that, Blake, I'm going to hand it back over to you to talk to us and walk through the customer intelligence side of things.
All right, thank you, Dean. All right, so here we're now on the customers dashboard that we have here in the Profit Max platform. And so we're going to be hitting on a couple of key features here, including, like Dean said, ABCD segmentation and churn prediction. But we do have a number of other features here as well. Customers by recent sale, customers over time. What are my new reactivated and churned customer counts? You have my top gainers and decliners, who bought way more than they used to and used to, again, cornerstones of our application here. So ABCD segmentation. ABCD segmentation is a really vital tool for understanding very quickly, when you're looking at a customer record, how historically profitable that customer has been for your business. So what ABCD segmentation does is it runs an algorithm in the background, and it assigns all of your customers to an ABCD segment, either in A, B, C, or D segment. And these, just like in school, are kind of grades for your customers. My A customers are my best, most profitable customers. And my D customers are so bad, they are actively costing me money. And so you can see, like in this system, only 89 customers fell into that D category. But if I'm a sales rep and I am making vital decisions around a customer, and whether I should offer them a discount or whether I should do a lot of things, being able to very quickly assess, is this an A, B, C, or D customer? It instantly allow me to make some quick decisions around, okay, this is how profitable they have been for us in the past. And I might make a decision based on that information. And so if we actually look at what's shown here, you can see that while the A customer segment, the number of customers in that group is pretty comparatively small, it actually has substantially more sales and margin. In fact, there's almost 1,000. There's 800 less customers in my A category here, but they generated almost $16 million more in margin. And so, what this feature allows me to do is actually, I'm going to go elsewhere first. So, one of the things that I love about this feature is anywhere that you have customers in this application, you're going to be able to see what A, B, C, D segment are they in. So let's say that I was over here in customers over time, and I was looking at my reactivated customers here. Well, instantly, I can start looking and seeing their ABCD segment right there next to their name. So, regardless of whether I'm evaluating a choice or I'm in here looking at customers who bought for the first time in a long time, like as I'm going through and I'm looking at this data, I'm going to see that ABCD segment right there, right next to their name. And I can sort and I can filter by this segment. And I can find the customers that make sense to focus on based on their financial impact on my business. Now, if we actually go back to the ABCD segmentation feature itself, we're also able to come in and we're able to see a bunch of really cool information about the segment as a whole. So it's not just that I have these A customers in my system and these B customers. It's that I can come in here and I can say, well, this is how much an average A customer is worth to me. What's an A customer on average has 18.3 orders with me. They have an average order value of $1,581. That is almost twice the average order value of one of my B customers. And so you can go down the list here and you can make really interesting inferences about the behaviors and understanding my best customers are doing these things. How does that compare to my B or C customers? And what can we do to get my B customers to become A customers? How do we get them to move up this scale? Because again, A customers uh, are so valuable. And more than just an A customer being valuable, like if you're a business owner and you someday want to have your business valuated or you want to sell your business or whatever that is, the actual valuation of your business will typically include something called a like a risk concentration analysis, where they're going to look to say how risky is your business based on your concentration of profit in your A customers. The best businesses, financially speaking, are the ones that are diversified, meaning they have a lot of A customers that make up that top 10% of your profit. Because the smaller that number is, the more detrimental it is to your business if you were to lose one of these A customers. So, again, by having this information interwoven throughout the application, you're able to make intelligent decisions for your business to not only allocate resources effectively to your best customers, you can prevent allocating resources and money to your worst customers, and you can make sure that you are actively protecting your A customers because an A customer leaving is such a big deal. We also have the ability here to filter, like on a lot of our customer pages, by customer class. So I can come in here and I could just say, okay, well, I have 121 national accounts that fit into my A category. And so again, you can go down and say, okay, how does that compare to retail or reseller or whatever is appropriate for your business? So there's one more layer to this experiment where I can say, okay, I know that these are my, in this case, retail A customers. I know they're incredibly valuable to my business, but who are they? And I can come in here and I can expand this A segment and I can get not only a similar breakdown of that information, but I can come down here and say, oh, these are my A customers. And I can get a high level view of these of the customer information related to them. So Owens and Cycling is my number one customer in my A segment. They have a margin of $134,000, and they've had or they're at 52.6% margin. So there's actually quite a few columns that you can add out here. What's their what's their aging, their average days between invoices. So there's a lot of cool information that you can pull out here to again understand your customer base, understand where you should and shouldn't be focusing your resources. Because if you have someone who is a C or D customer coming to you asking for a discount, like your answer to that, or the answer of how much to discount or mark down, or how much marketing spend are we going to make with this company, like all of those decisions can be influenced by understanding their historical profitability with your company. And it's all again, it's all about at the end of the day, protecting your margin and increasing it where you can, and understanding your the history of of these customers for you is really vital to that conversation. So the other thing that we're going to talk about related to customers is churn prediction. So churn prediction uses a bunch of machine learning and data science under the hood to basically use something called RFM analysis, which is an algorithm that takes a couple of factors into account to generate a risk profile for your company or for your customers. So if we actually jump into churn prediction here, you can see that I have customers in a bunch of buckets. I have minimal risk uh, companies all the way up to high risk and elevated risk. And the idea here is that this RFM analysis, which stands for recency, frequency, and monetary. So, how recently did they buy from you? How frequently do they normally buy from you? And how much money do they spend with you? The combination of that information is used to assign them to a risk score when they deviate from that. So you can actually see that right now I have elevated and high risk categories selected here. So all of the customers presented to me are those high risk and elevated risk customers that I might want to be reaching out to protect. And you can see here that this grid also features that ABCD segment, and the combination of understanding their risk and understanding their ABCD segment, that tells me that not only was this customer right here a very valuable customer to my business, but they're at high risk of churning. And that is a huge problem for my business because I never want to lose an A customer. They are my best, most profitable customers. So being able to come in here and very quickly ascertain, well, what is their ABCD segment? What is their risk? And then you can see over here on the right, you have a number of data points that you can also rely on. So in this case, this top customer here, Summit Athletics, they have 52 invoices over their lifetime for a total lifetime margin of $232,000. And they are at high risk of leaving my business. So immediately I'm in here and I'm doing whatever I need to like again, a lot of columns are available here, just like in SalesPad, if you're familiar with that, or many other ERP systems. But now I can pull out my sales rep field here, and I could say, okay, so I have this high risk customer, they're high segment, historically valuable, and this is their sales rep. So I can reach out if I'm a sales manager or whoever. I can start building a list, a call list. I can start reaching out to sales reps who have high value customers that are at high risk. And I can start making those conscientious decisions to make sure that we do whatever we can so that this customer does not leave our business. Are they buying from someone else? Is this a customer that was having a lot of returns with us? Like, are we selling them a lot of something that is not good enough quality and we are driving this relationship negative? And so a lot of cool information, a lot of cool data points can be gleaned from this.
Awesome.
Dean,
That's amazing, Blake. I'm actually going to jump in. I'm not going to slip back over to the slides because I think you've given us a good overview of the margin and customer intelligence. The other part we wanted to talk about was this is obviously sort of the pre-built dashboards that we've built and provided for a customer that are organizing a customer's data into ways that make sense for distributors. But one of the coolest things we've done is with Ava, our profitability navigator, is the Ava Insights, and I think that was going to be sort of your next piece here was talking about how not only are we packaging information for you in a way that makes it easy to understand, we're giving it even more next step of giving you some ideas of what you can be doing with it.
Yeah, completely right. And so insights, this is the insights button here in the top right. You can see it's red because I have new insights for today. So what insights is it is a underlying mechanism that that goes through, it combs through all of those data points in your system, and it says, not, a lot of BI apps, they present that information to you directly. Here are all of these data points. Do something with it. And what we're really two very specific things that we think that you should be focused on to again increase and maximize your profitability. These specific customers are now at risk. You are losing customers at a higher rate than normal. Or coming down here, you can see that some of these are item related. You have 79 items that have experienced a decline of 15% or more in quantity sold month to date compared to the same time period last year. So it's going through your data and it's raising up some of these insights so that you can come in here and you could say, I really need to investigate this. And in a lot of cases, like unless it's presented to you, unless you were out there actively looking for it, it can bring things to your attention that you might have never thought to even look for. Uh, maybe I never would have thought to look for specific item classes with an outsized decline in margin. So being able to come in here, here are specific sales territories with a 20% or more margin decline quarter to date. Like this is, in this case, this is one sales territory. And instantly I can come in here and I can click on it and I can find who was that. And in this case, it was my Canada sales territory in this case had a huge decline in margin percent. And if we go back to insights here, again, I have 389 customers here that are expected to churn in the next 30 days. Should I be calling these customers? Well, let's click on it. Let's find out who these customers were. So maybe I come in here and I say, I have uh, a bunch of options like customer status, lifetime margin, etc., to come in here and make a really informed choice about who these customers that it's calling out are and what they're buying from me. So again, I can start using those insights to hone in on specific things that I should be looking at. So you come in here on a daily basis and you're going to have new insights every single day that are drawing your attention to things in your system that you may be losing profit and money on, and giving you that opportunity to very quickly say, okay, here's a great place for me to start my investigation, or here's a great place for me to hand off to a success team in my company to start calling or marketing or discounting to try to improve or whatever is appropriate for the situation. So there's a lot of great stuff there. One last thing that I do want to call out is we have some pretty interesting segmentation features in the application in general. So here I'm just on the margin dashboard, and I can actually come down and I can look at my margin broken down by quite a few segments. Like here's my margin by customer class, and here's how it changed year over year. But I could also come in here and say my margin by ABCD segment, or also very cool, I can come in and say uh, my margin by lead source. So how much margin from the customers that I had that were partner referrals versus internet searches or sports events, or again, whatever's appropriate for your business. There's also some great stuff in here related to, again, related to customer invoice. Maybe I want to look at it broken down by billing zip code, etc. So again, a lot of great options to come in here to look at your data and find out where are those little things, where are those big things that I could be doing to really increase and focus in on getting my profit to the next level.
That's awesome. That's awesome, Blake. Appreciate you walking us through all that. Um, We are getting close to time here, so I wanted to kind of move us forward and get to the Q&A section. And we had a couple questions that came in, but before I jump to that, I wanted to kind of hit on a couple of things to help customers. We obviously geeked out and showed you some of the calculations and things of how we think about the science of profit and the things that are important, and sharing the secret that obviously the little changes have these outsized and big impacts, and we showed how our technology can help you with that. But if you're just trying to get started, I think there's a few questions that you can start asking yourself, and Blake focused on this and showing kind of how we can see it and how Cavallo can help you with it. But these are questions that can help. Can I see margin per order per line, right? Is that something that I have the ability to do today? And if I don't, start thinking about what makes sense for me to try to understand that and figure that out. Can I enforce my pricing at the quote and order level? This is a big one, right? So, if I've got sales reps that can discount willy-nilly and make changes to pricing, we've shown you that even just as small as like a 1 or 2% decrease in your price can have an outsized impact on that margin and profitability. And you think about if they start giving 10, 15%, it becomes a big deal. Do you segment your customers by margin and not revenue? I mean, this is a big one. Even if without using our technology, if you start saying, "Hey, I'm gonna stop looking at the number of orders or the number or the amount of revenue, and I want to look at the profitability of this. What's my gross margin? Wait, I might be focusing on customers that aren't as profitable as others." And then, do you know which customers are slipping away? Do you have any sort of metric that you're utilizing? How often are you trying to determine, when my customers are and how they're thinking about my products? It's not always going to be one simple metric that's going to change that, right? It might, we talked about recency and frequency and the volume. That doesn't always mean that one of those is going to be indicative. It's usually some combination of those that's going to give you the best of that. And then finally, I think going back to the whole purpose here is if you're really focusing on profitability, it's recognizing the impact those small changes have. And the piece of that I would suggest the strongest here is that it's imperative that you employ technology that's designed for distributor profitability, and that doesn't even have to be ours. I think that's I want to make that very clear that as you're looking at different technologies, whether that's how do I an add-on for my existing ERP, I'm looking to a new ERP, I'm looking at other solutions, is make sure that as you're discussing with them and you're talking with them that they're focused on your profitability, not just giving you more orders or not just trying to find more customers, because there's costs associated with all of those things. Whereas when you can make those tweaks to your existing customers, tweaks to existing orders, you can impact profitability without having to increase headcount or decrease headcount, etc. So very, very important aspects of what we're doing here. Okay, we're running a little long, but I wanted to get a couple questions on here. I think that we had in the queue really quickly. How often is data being updated in the Profit Max platform?
Yeah, so for the most part, when you hook up your system to the Profit Max platform, we have a little engine that runs in the background that's pushing data up to the Profit Max platform. And then every night, we take all of that new data and we calculate a ton of things with it. Again, we looked at the margin variance analysis earlier with so many data points comparing those periods together. So it does all of that work. So every single day when you come in, the data is current as of that day. So every night at the end of the business day, we basically take all of that new data, we calculate all those new things, and we make it available in the app.
Awesome. Okay, well, you're extracting all that ERP data. What measures are you taking to ensure security and compliance? Because obviously that's important data there.
Yeah, I mean, we take security very seriously, and we know that data is something that's so important. It is a precious commodity, and like especially on the Salesbat GP side, that engine that I talked about, that uses really secure reverse SSH tunnels in order to connect and feed that information in a way that again protects your data sovereignty, gets it to us as safely as possible, and that's data that's unstained within our system. So I think that there's a lot of forethought that has gone into that, and we certainly have documentation we can share if there are people who want to know more specifics about what those measures that we've taken are.
Awesome. We got one more question that came in under the wire, so I'll ask it here, and I'll take this one. How does licensing for the Profit Max platform work? Is it a per user license? No. It's one of the great things about it is a site license. So, your platform, depending upon, there's one price to connect with your ERP and bring that data in and have access to all of the wonderful things you saw today. All right. So we did run a little long, but we got a lot of info there, so I'm glad we were able to get it all in. I want to say thank you to Blake. Blake, appreciate your time, appreciate you showing us the product, and for all of you spending your part of your day with us, we hope to see you all in future webinars. Speaking of which, we have a lot of webinars coming up. Please visit our events page, cavallo.com. That's our events and schedules. You'll be able to register for upcoming webinars, including some more about the Profit Max platform. We focus on customer margin intelligence a little more deeply, but also for our customers on GP and customers on BC, we've got some sales pad for GP and BC sessions as well. If you'd like to explore your organization specific needs, reach out to your account manager if you have one. If not, you can email marketing@cavallo.com. And then last, there'll be a short survey when you exit the webinar. We would love to have your feedback. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining us today, and we hope that you have a great day. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, Dean. Bye, everyone.